Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. We will just get started. Thank you all for joining us at the webinar. We're very excited to launch this piece of research that we've done in partnership between SPARC, supported by FCDO, and the Mercy Corps AgriFin project. This piece of research comes out of a broader partnership between SPARC and the AgriFin Accelerate, as we are digging into unlocking digital solutions for pastoralists, agropastoralists, and farmers together. We have a great lineup for you. We'll kick off with a 20-minute presentation about the research that's been conducted by Shadrach from Dalberg Research. Dalberg is part of the Dalberg Group and specializes in research and analysis to find actionable solutions. They have worked with AgriFin, Accelerate, and SPARC to answer questions about markets, consumers, and lifestyles. They work across more than 20 African countries on quantitative and qualitative studies. The SPARC program, which many of you I know have followed our series of webinars in the past, is a UK Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office supported program. SPARC stands for Supporting Pastoralism and Agriculture in Recurrent and Protracted Crisis. The program aims to generate evidence that address knowledge gaps to build the resilience of millions of pastoralists and agropastoralists and farmers in sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East. This work comes out of the innovation component that is designed to co-create, curate, and broker evidence on innovation and innovation systems in East and West Africa. And on this, as I mentioned, we've partnered with AgriFin Accelerate, which is a Mercy Corps program. Mercy Corps works in over 40 countries to help communities forge new pathways to prosperity in the face of disaster, poverty, and the impacts of climate change. And this program is currently funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Bayer Foundation, and is working with small-scale producers to ensure that they prosper from a digitally interconnected world. So we're excited to share all of this with you. And with that, I would love to hand over and invite Shadrach to speak about the research with us. Welcome, Shadrach.
Thank you, Chloe. Hi, team. Hi, colleagues. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon from Nairobi. This is Shadrach Munene, and welcome aboard as we share knowledge in this interesting topic on driving innovation in digital agriculture. I'm glad to be your presenter, and thank you for joining us. Cheers. In today's presentation, since we have already gone through our introduction, I'll take you through the study background and objectives. On a top level, I'll describe the profiles of the smallholder farmers, agropastoralists, and pastoralists. Then we will dive into how they access and use digital financing and digital information services, and challenges and opportunities in the access and use of digital information service and digital financial services. And we will end by looking at some of the gaps that we identified through the study. Before then, let's jump first of all to understand the study background and the objectives. Our approach was purely secondary research with a review of materials like journals, publications, white papers from credible sources. We also looked at data banks or data from private and public repositories that we analyzed and used it to really support the findings from our search. Just to note, we only considered materials that were published within the last 7 years. We assumed that the 2 years of high COVID restrictions really played a key role, and there was little research work that was done to be able to really support most of our findings that we have already identified in this research. The objectives of this research is to conduct an in-depth profiling of the farmers, agropastoralists, and pastoralists through studying the value chains they participate in, and how they access and use digital financial services and digital information services. Secondly is to interrogate existing information on access and utilization of digital financial services and digital information services. and exploring opportunities to enhance information sharing and adoption by producers. But first, uh, since we'll be mentioning quite a number of times these two terms, let's define digital financial services and digital information services, which I will, in most cases, use a short format of DFS and DIS. For DFS, that is digital financial services. This is the use of digital systems, devices, and channels for the purpose of accessing financial information. Digital information services, on the other hand, involves the delivery of information using digital channels or devices, and in this context, agricultural information. In both cases, it can be through internet, using interactive voice record systems, short messaging services, and low-tech channels like mainstream media, which can be TV or radio, with the aim of sharing information at the convenience of the user without them having to physically visit the branch or organization that is offering these services. Some of the information shared can be market information, advisory on finance or agriculture, information on any ongoing interventions, among others. I believe it's also important to draw your attention to the environment that majority of the pastoralists do operate in, even before we start discussing our findings today. But first, I will start with profiling the producers. Who the producers basically means the smallholder farmers, agropastoralists, and pastoralists at the same time. In the next slides, I'll take you through the profiles of the producers and give you a brief highlight of the value chains they operate in. First, just to note, smallholder farmers are more predominant in the area around central Kenya and the western region. They account for around 3/4 of the country's total agricultural output. On the other hand, pastoralism is practiced across 2/3 of the ASAL region, that is arid and semi-arid regions, and contributes to around 1/3 of the meat consumed locally in the country. This sector also employs a majority of the local population, especially in the northern region. Agropastoralists operate in semi-arid zones where they can grow crops like maize, which can be used to subsidize feeds during the dry season. If we look at the producers and how they access towns and urban centers, which are very key in accessing formal financing and also markets, we note that smallholder farmers are better placed as compared to pastoral communities. In some studies, actually, the pastoralists were noted to have sold their cattle as they were en route to grazing areas, which makes them more susceptible to brokerage and in turn getting very poor market prices. You can look into the report for more insights on the infrastructure. On the producer level, smallholder farmers tend to be more balanced in terms of gender as compared to pastoralists. They tend to, which tends to have to be more male dominated, whereby males do provide herding services. Due to the remoteness in which pastoralists do operate in, levels of education, health, among other amenities can be less prioritized, which in many cases leads to low literacy levels and education, which is a big pain point when it comes to adopting digital information sharing. Although smallholder farmers are balanced on gender, there is a disparity on earnings, whereby women earn close to 2 times lower when compared to the males. Education is typically viewed to have a relationship with higher income, although this does not really apply when we look at pastoralists. Earning among pastoralists is a bit of a complex agenda, since this is more male-dominated operation, and other socio-cultural norms, they tend to influence the earning and income sharing. If you look at the value chains, maize farming is very common among smallholder farmers. majorly because it's a staple food and can be used to feed animals. Traditional value chains are less developed, like sorghum, millet, and cassava in most of the smallholder farmers. Across the pastoralists, cattle and sheep remain as the most dominant value chains among many agropastoralists and pastoralists. Pastoralists do specialize in indigenous cattle like zebu that are able to survive harsh climatic conditions. Agropastoralists, on the other side, who are commonly within the semi-arid region, they mix exotic and indigenous varieties depending on the climate that they face. Camels are common along the northern corridor and lower and eastern. Donkeys are more common in the agropastoralist area where they used to provide labor. You can also look out for more insights about producers and the producer profiles in the main report that will be shared later after this webinar. Okay, I will take this section. I'll take you through this section and we will discuss more into how producers access and use digital financial information. We will highlight some of the channels they use to access information on finance and their saving behaviors. It is worth noting that access to mobile money among smallholder farmers is high. General savings, that is through social finance groups within the village, and table banking are also prominent among smallholder farmers. Women in smallholder farmer households tend to lean more on informal finance when compared to men. Groups like table banking, chamas have less stringent regulations and they receive more attention in the rural setup as compared to more formal financing systems like banks. Lack of collateral and control of resources by men tends to push women towards informal financing systems. In general, men have a better access to formal and responsible agricultural loans, while women in the rural areas prefer informal and unreliable sources for lending and savings. Further studies also indicated that older women in the rural areas had a high access to informal loans. If we look at bankability as a proxy to show the tendency of adoption of digital financing services, you will note that male-headed households within the pastoral region will tend to have a bank account. According to this study, it was cited that availability of banking institutions in the areas where pastoralists do operate was rare due to the poor infrastructure. Distrust in banks was also a challenge in accessing formal banking institutions. A proportion of pastoralists perceived that they did not have enough money or never needed to use formal channels like banks, which can be linked with some financial knowledge and literacy challenges. If you relate these with digital financing, men would be actually a good low-hanging fruit in any efforts towards digital financing. In terms of savings, more than a quarter of the pastoral households would prefer saving in cash, with females being likely to save either in cash or mobile wallets. When compared to the males who save the banks, we do find that males tend to really prefer using formal channels as compared to the females. Okay, I will move on to the digital information services. I'll take you through how producers do access and use digital information services. Among the smallholder farmers, especially the youths, there is a noticeable proportion of the smallholder farmers accessing advisory services through the social media and mobile apps. The low-tech channels like mainstream media, that is the TV and radios, play a key role in disseminating information in the smallholder farmer regions. Farmer-to-farmer information or peer-to-peer information sharing and agricultural extension officers are also key in sharing information. By gender, smallholder farmers do not differ in accessing digital extension services and advisory services. Although more males accessed information through TV, mobile phones as compared to females. We also noted that smallholder farmers were able to access information through mobile phones. The effect of extension officers among smallholder farmers cannot be underrated in dissemination of information. These farmers tend to offer detailed information through trainings, on-farm management, and application of inputs and seedlings. Hybrid digital channels centered around this avenue of the extension officers would yield a greater impact within the producers. Currently, there are numerous programs through the low-tech channels that smallholder farmers are able to receive information from. If you may have noticed through the TV and radio, there is much information that is being shared in terms of farming and agricultural practices. Some of the key programs that we have seen basically are funded, some of them are actually funded through Mercycorp and other agricultural key players like Shamba Shape Up, among others. In multiple cases, smallholder farmers tend to seek information on pests and diseases management, climate and weather, good agricultural practices. The study also noted that a few smallholder farmers looked for information on value addition and credit facilities. Pastoralists are willing to embrace more modern technological methods in receiving accurate and up-to-date information through social media and mainstream media. They, however, would prefer information about rainfall and other climate conditions to be disseminated through radio, which in many cases they have access to. Social media would also help them plan when it comes to dissemination, would also be useful in sharing information to help them plan for events like drought and floods. I will turn on to the challenges that we also looked at while we were looking at while we were reviewing the materials that we used for this study. Producers do face a myriad of barriers in digital finance and information sharing, like literacy levels, infrastructure, cultural norms that tend to embrace old-fashioned culture and prestige wealth model, where ownership of cattle is viewed as pride. Cost of gadgets also tends to push farmers away from digital channels, and also limited awareness among digital stakeholders, among others, tends to really not share information that is required in time. Network coverage among pastoral communities, phone ownership and internet use is still a challenge in this area. Hence, mainstream media and agricultural extension services would still thrive in these areas. Phone ownership and internet use in half of these counties, that is within the ASAL region, is below the regional average. Mobile network coverage, which plays a key role in digital channels, is well distributed within most of the smallholder farmer region, except for lower eastern parts in Kitui and Makueni. Banking on this broad network of network distribution and the improved ownership of mobile phones and internet use, there is a greater opportunity to convince smallholder farmers to utilize digital channels in accessing finance and information. Majority of the counties in the smallholder regions are above the regional average. Although information was accessible to some of the farmers, some farmers could identify key areas that needed to be addressed or improved within the information shared. That is safe use of chemicals and fertilizer, pest and disease scouting, so that farmers can be able to identify pests and also identify diseases early. Animal husbandry, measures like simple livestock diagnosis, feeds, and vaccination. When you look at mobile money, there has been observed growth in utility of mobile money among smallholder farmers, although cash transactions are still high. This growth has been observed among male and female smallholder farmers, although more farmers made more payments as compared to receiving payments. Globally, there is an influx of mobile device manufacturers having mobile phones, which makes mobile phones more affordable. Integration between bank and mobile wallets has also increased e-commerce, and there is a promising growth of digital e-commerce. The low level of savings in banks, SACCOs, microfinancial institutions among agropastoralists and pastoralists is mainly attributed to the institution's limited presence in rural areas due to challenges in their infrastructure, as mostly they tend to be located in urban centers. Additionally, there is lack of trust among these communities towards these financial institutions. We will jump on to the gaps that we identified through our search on multiple literatures and datasets. First, we will start with digital financial services. If we look at gaps in digital financial services, we notice that there is limited data or information on the financial behaviors and practices of the producers, especially after accessing finance within the scope of the last 7 years. Quantifiable information like the amounts of loans producers will be interested in, amounts borrowed, incomes on sale of the products and farm produce. Utility of funds is also missing, which makes it difficult to gauge the value of investment for most of the stakeholders in agriculture. Women empowerment is also a listed topic. The effects of cybersecurity in agricultural space is also mentioned or studied in most of the studies or materials that we reviewed, although producers cited distrust in digital finance as a key risk. When you looked at the gaps in the use of digital information services, we noted that not much information was available about how producers use or access the information to solve their problems. Efforts to tackle digital literacy as a barrier have not been widely researched on. Agropastoralists too have not been singled out as a key segment in most of the studies that we looked at. Most of the studies that we reviewed in pastoralism adopted a case-based study format as opposed to a representative sample or a census, although this can be attributed to the nomadic nature of the pastoral operations. This makes domain expertise very important in studying pastoral behaviors. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of my presentation for today. And again, thank you for being a good audience to me.
Thank you so much, Shadrach, for that presentation and for everyone for the questions. We will come back to those questions after a few comments from our panel. So we have 4 people up on the panel who will each give us about 5 minutes reflection, some examples from working on digital services in these contexts, and some reflections on how this report may be put more into action. We'll kick off with Dr. Kuno Abdi. Dr. Kuno is the country director for Mercy Corps in Kenya. Kuno, I'd love to invite you to share your feedback, your comments on this with us, and help us to contextualize these findings into current topics that are being discussed in Kenya.
Thank you so much, Chloe. I never expected to start, sorry. Yeah, I think the presentation was great and the findings are interesting, partly because of the different clustering of pastoralism, agropastoralism, and the smallholder farmers. And the behaviors, of course, are changing over time. Some of the findings are probably surprising to know. May not necessarily surprising for the practitioners, but surprising for the non-practitioners. When we talk about digital information services, I think there is increasing trend for information availability, as already indicated. But the kind of the use of the information service itself, I think, is still a little bit something on a gray area. When we talk about financial services themselves, financial services are more linked to remittances, and there is more penetration of financial services. But this does not necessarily also mean the availability of bank accounts and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of I need it now and I use it now. So that is the pastoralism that I know. I will probably talk more about pastoralism as a characteristics as opposed to the well-known ones in our classical smallholder farmers that are more closer to more knowledge, more closer to the urban centers. And my focus on pastoralism will be also the convenient one that we say in the dry lands, in where there are animals, where there is no probably crop agriculture. And then we talk about pastoralism. I mean, this is also a little bit simplistic because most of the settled communities are kind of also in the pastoralism ecosystem, but are not necessarily the pastoralists. So how deep do we go, or how far deep do we go in terms of the agency question? I think is something very interesting that we will have to discuss probably in the coming half an hour or so, or even the questions. When it comes to information services, I'll be more interested in linking the information service itself to a specific product, whether it is anticipated action or certain information or extension service for use by pastoralists. I think that will be a little bit more interesting. The space is increasing, more pastoralists having mobile phones. This may not necessarily mean that these are smartphones, but the information can be available to these communities in the different ways. And the other question, probably to later on to our other panelists, will be when it comes to pastoralism. Pastoralism is also changing in terms of trend and dynamics. To an extent, even some of the pastoralists themselves are hiring people to do their pastoral herding work, and that some of the pastoralist children are going to schools, or they are kind of also temporarily settled. So the changing trend in pastoralism itself, the changing dynamics both in rural-urban migration or the displacement by the droughts and climate fragilities are also changing the habits on the pastoralism and agropastoralism when it comes to access to information services, and of course also the dynamics on digital financial services. I will not go so much into the specifics. I think the research is so clear on some of the myths around growing trends. Probably I'll just give my thoughts on the fact that we need, when it comes to programming, I think, to tailor closely the information services that we talk about, whether it is the extension services or the anticipated action, to be more useful to the pastoralist context. Some of the panelists, I think, will talk into this, but also the question of remittances, which are much more advanced when it comes to financial services, I've already mentioned. I will not go so much into the detail, and thank you so much for having me for this webinar. I will also listen in and probably stand up for any questions that are specifically directed to me in the question and answer session. Thank you, and back to Chloe.
Thanks so much, Kuno. It's great to reflect on that in terms of overall trends that are happening in the country and the region. Next up for comments, I'd love to invite Grace Ndroge. Grace is the Deputy Program Director for the Mercy Corps AgriFin project. And Grace, it would be great if you could share with us a bit more about digital financial service challenges and opportunities that you are seeing through your work, and that would benefit from the findings in this study.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our participants, depending on where you're logging in from. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you, Shadrach, for the presentation, and thank you, Dr. Kuno, for those opening remarks. So just a bit of a short description around what AgriFin does. So we are a program within Mercy Corps, and we work with public and private sector partners to design, test, and scale digitally enabled products and services for smallholder farmers. And these services aim to increase productivity, increase incomes, and improve resilience for the smallholder farmers. We've been over the last 8 years in the space, working across Africa and Asia. We've worked with over 150 partners, and we've reached more than 17 million smallholder farmers. Digital financial services is as indeed also digital information services. They are among some of our thematic areas where we provide support to our partners to develop, design, and test and roll out these services to smallholder farmers. Based on that, I'll be sharing some of our experiences with providing this support to partners. So I'll not dwell much on the barriers and challenges because Shadrach has outlined most of them very clearly in his presentation. However, I will just highlight, as I mentioned, a few examples of how we've worked with some of our partners to enable delivery, uptake, and usage of digital financial services across our different markets of operations, including Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Nigeria, as well as Ethiopia. One of the challenges that has been mentioned is that providers do not have visibility of farmers. And indeed, we do know that traditional providers of formal financial services like banks, for example, some microfinance institutions, some telcos, etc., do not have an idea or very good visibility of who these farmers are and what their financial behavior is. And this is because most of these smallholder farmers and pastoralists have not been formally banked before. And when you look at gender and women, this number is even higher, as you've also seen from the report, that most women are accessing informal financial services. One of the companies that we've worked with and are working with currently is Equity Bank, and how they have chosen to counter this challenge or to look at how to overcome this barrier is to consider using, and what they're doing is using alternative data that is provided by agtech companies. Again, just recognizing that they're a big bank and they're not really able to get down there onto the grassroots and really identify who these farmers are, have a relationship, because it is really very hard to serve, and it also increases their cost to serve. So what they've done is partnered with agtech companies who are closer to these farmers, who work on a daily basis with these farmers, who know who these farmers are, have information, for example, on what these farmers are producing, where they're located, what some of their produce has been historically. And what Equity is then using this data from the agtechs to generate credit scores with the aim of making lending decisions. So this is very exciting because most of these farmers will indeed interact with a formal financial institution like a big bank, like Equity Bank, for the first time in their lives. And probably this will also be the first time in their lives that they are accessing a formal financial service. Another similar innovation that we're seeing is digitizing of SACCOs. We have a partner we're working with here in Kenya again, called Amtech, who have developed an automated credit scoring system. So this system analyzes farmer data sets to produce relevant credit scores, and this enables these SACCOs to lend to smallholder farmers. So this also just serves to complement the existing data and to capacity build or to provide capacity to these SACCOs to be able to make lending decisions to these farmers. And then these SACCOs are, again, they're not the traditional SACCOs that have a financial sort of history. These are more of the agricultural SACCOs that are doing this for the first time. When it comes to female smallholder farmers, again, as has been mentioned, most of this target group are accessing financial services using informal channels. So you find that a lot of women, female smallholder farmers are in VSLAs, the table banking, the chamas, etc. And we're working with some of our partners again to link these smallholder farmers and use their informal banking and link it to formal channels, therefore just providing greater access and higher access to these women smallholder farmers to access formal financial services. So not looking at the barriers or the challenges, because those are already really outlined well, but looking at the opportunity. The opportunity is really very massive for the sector. From the presentation, we've already seen that there is already acceptance, and this is really growing in terms of the sector, the smallholder farmers, and the pastoralists using mobile money. We've seen that their usage grew 2 times more from the grew 2 times more. 2 times between 2019 and 2021. And this, what this has done, what this shows us that is that there is a growing trust and awareness of digital transactions. And typically, historically, we've seen that financial service providers have to overcome an initial hurdle of having digital being accepted. And so, if this hurdle is already sort of overcome in one way or the other, it just means that there's already a greater acceptance of smallholder farmers and the sector using digital financial services. And so the opportunity really is massive. And what remains now is just to craft relevant solutions and relevant products to serve the needs of the market. Another innovative approach that we've seen that is serving to make the cost to serve less and making the solutions more affordable to the sector is we've seen a number of our partners using the bundling approach to offer digital financial services. I think Dr. Kuno has sort of alluded to it in his presentation that where you bundle or offer information services together with financial products and other non-financial products, this reaches more smallholder farmers, more pastoralists, but it's also makes the solutions more affordable to smallholder farmers. And so we've seen approaches where different private sector and public sector players are targeting the same group of farmers. And so indeed, within the digital sector and within especially within DFS, we are seeing that for this rural segment, competition is replacing competition. So instead of using an approach where a lot of providers are approaching the same group of farmers independently, we are seeing them coming together, bundling and offering a bundled approach, which is getting more uptake from the farmers. We're working with a partner in Tanzania called Eka Africa, who's offering this sort of approach. And what they're doing is that they've bundled their product. They offer insurance to the rural segment. They're bundling insurance together with information services. They've also bundled together with climate resilient seeds, and they're also incorporating a credit element from one of the main banks in Tanzania. And so we are seeing that is really having a lot of uptake, a lot of positive acceptance from the farmers, and the solution really is growing. And it also, as I mentioned, is meaning that there's less cost to serve, and so these solutions are able to be offered at a competitive pricing. So that said, there are great strides that are happening, a lot of opportunity, but then it also means that the sector still needs a lot of investment to incentivize and de-risk efforts by the private sector players. For example, before product design, providers need to invest heavily in terms of understanding who their target market are, understanding their needs, and crafting solutions that then address these needs, again, to just ensure that the products will have greater uptake. And so some of the areas that providers can work with and a lot of investment is needed is just in terms of probably designing human-centered research, conducting the research, designing the solutions, and offering this to the market. We've also come across something interesting that is coming from the work that we do with our partners, is that we are seeing that products whose design takes into consideration the unique needs of women are reaching just as many men as those that did not consider women. And so it makes business sense for providers to invest in developing women-centric products and solutions, because this will expand their reach to more women, and it will not exclude any men at all. And so there's also a lot of effort that needs to be put in terms of designing and targeting digital financial services, taking into consideration the unique needs of women. I think I'll stop there for now. So back to you, Chloe.
Thanks so much, Grace. It's great to hear how AgriFin is putting some of this into practice already, and the opportunities there, and especially the focus on opportunities for women. So thanks for sharing those examples. Next, for our comments, I would love to invite Abdi Fattah Dekane. Abdi Fattah is a program manager for Mercy Corps' Adaptation Services for Action and Learning, or ASL ADAPTS program. Abdi, I invite you to take the floor.
Thank you, Chloe, and thank you, team, Shadrach, Dr. Kuno, and Grace, for that presentation. I will take you through the role of digital information services to support the local governance structures, in this case, county governments, in the management of resources. So, as Shadrach has shared, communities down there in those marginal counties are facing, challenges accessing digital information services, and you said they are way below the regional average. County governments, since devolution, now in their third term, are really at a very nascent stage, and it's the last mile provision of the much needed services to the communities. And this is not a one-way provision of services. There needs to be, that citizen engagement. So digital services in this case ranges from automating different departments in a county government. So this will include something like cashless payments, automated fiscal planning processes, digitizing the land records, digitizing the field to office workflows. Basically, digital information services is greatly supporting county governments in the sustainable management of natural resources in this case. So, and these services provide critical data and information to assist with rangeland management decision making. So Masico is supporting in a program called as a program. We are supporting the county governments of Wajir and Garissa to leverage on technology or to support county governments to manage resources. So in this case, Masco, in partnership with Eastern Africa, who is a system developer, is developing a county integrated GIS system, which is a centralized unified spatial data management system that comes in handy in the improvement of service delivery through improved decision-making process. So the unified GIS system, brings about participatory planning. It brings about that transparency, accountability, and it's increased access to government services by the citizens. It allows for real-time data collection using digital tools, which aids in monitoring, rangelands, land use, land cover, which in turn also, prevents overgrazing and social and soil degradation. For instance, using digital maps and apps, county governments can work with pastoral communities to establish grazing corridors, ensuring sustainable use of rangelands. So the system is helping county governments to better manage their assets, interlink, their scattered systems. Initially, all the departments of county governments are like siloed. We have the Department of Health here, water is there, livestock is there. So each one of them, these systems are not talking to one another. So it interlinks these scattered systems so as to establish, effective communication and collaboration. It enhances, a one system approach. And, it also enhances that shared learning and combines a variety of, geographical data in different ways. So it also, this platform, which is now being deployed to county governments, and county governments are now very, active partners. It provides, the platform provides the capacity for county governments to monitor and manage environmental indicators, rangeland management, hazards management, monitoring of, environmental dynamics. So it provides, an architecture on which the county government spatial plan will be developed, hosted, and updated, making it live and interactive. So information service in this case is improving communication and collaboration among stakeholders. So counties now will need an up-to-date data which will provide them with an array of options in knowing where the gaps are, where they need, interventions, whether in disaster response, in environmental management, in agriculture, and even the challenges that come up as a result of population dynamics. So there's also the need for county governments to provide a way in which citizens can give feedback on various projects undertaken by the county government and other partners. So this kind of, closes the feedback loop between county governments and communities. As much as it enhances that collaboration between county government internally, it also opens up, a space for county government and communities to really interact. So some of the examples of digital information services that are used by county governments in this case will include GPS mapping and remote sensing technologies, which providing detailed information on rangeland conditions, such as soil and vegetation covers. Weather monitoring services can assist with predicting and managing potential risks to rangelands. Drought is really very, very, very prevalent. So real-time weather data and soil moisture sensors is helping, predict drought conditions and supporting early warning, systems of county governments. And that also, kind of supports grazing management and grazing, and rangeland planning. So, and then digitizing land information systems by the county governments. This enhances the land tenure system within the county government, which now results in better use of land resources. So through digital mapping, county governments can identify areas of high biodiversity, probably if there are, special areas that will need special management considerations. For example, conservancies, areas that will require special attention. So the feature of digital information services and is really like evolving very fast, and the use of digital information services to support rangeland management is expected to always grow, and county governments are really like adopting this kind of technology. So these tools now will enhance the open government policy, open data, that cooperation between county government and other actors, internal and externally, that open data, knowledge sharing kind of culture. And by embracing these kind of opportunities, county governments can improve their rangeland management practices and, and other, bigger land use, land cover kind of managements for future generations. So as county governments are now, at a very nascent stage, still having, teething challenges, they are facing with numerous challenges in resource management, whether it is natural resource management, whether it is their own resources and the funds which they manage. So we call upon basically all development partners to support county governments to fully adapt, for them to adapt and utilize and get the best value out of this kind of technology. So in that case, Masco is now currently supporting Garissa and Wajir county governments to kind of adopt a GIS-based system. And then we also partner with a number of other diverse actors on this front. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdi Fatah. It's really interesting to hear how digital information services can be used to support governance and local governance beyond interacting directly with farmers and pastoralists. So thanks for bringing that perspective to the conversation. Next up for comments, I'd like to invite Samuel Karanja. Sam is an agricultural manager at AgriFin. And Sam, I'd love to invite you to share with us more the role of digital channels and other channels, the incorporation of hybrid models, and experience you've had working all over Kenya with different groups. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Chloe. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone, wherever you are. So thanks to the previous presenters. I think I will not dwell a lot on the discussion on digital information services that Abdi Fatah has talked about. I would maybe want to focus more on how best can we get information reaching small-scale farmers, as well as the experience we've had as AgriFin in terms of reaching small-scale farmers. So essentially, of course, we have quite a high mobile penetration. And of course, there is need for to explore further channels for reaching out to small-scale farmers. From the report, I think it was clear that we have about most farmers rely on some of the low-tech methods, digital channels, to be able to access information. So with about 84% of the small-scale farmers, as well as the pastoralists, getting information through radio. So radio is the most prevalent channel of getting information to small-scale farmers. And also, of course, the local TV stations, mainly the local dialects that they have, they're able to get information about good agricultural practices, as well as other other means of improving their farms. So just give an example of some of the work that we've done using some of these low-tech methods for using digital services. We worked with the FAO, the government of Kenya, a number of partners under a partnership with Skoll Foundation during the infestation of the desert locusts. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the desert locust infestation that was there at the beginning of 2020, which was quite devastating. And there was need essentially to try to reach more farmers with information on, first of all, to give information where the locusts are being spotted for control measures, as well as also doing some myth busting on some of the things that farmers, livestock keepers thought that locust, for example, would affect their livestock. So we were able to reach close to 6 million farmers using radio. So radio, as we mentioned, is quite prevalent in use. Working with partners like Shamba Shaper with their TV shows, we were able to reach quite a number of communities with information. From our research and studies that we've conducted with a number of research institutions like 60 Decibel and Busara, we've been able to find out that SMS may be underrated in terms of getting information to small-scale farmers, but we found that it's the most effective from the research of getting information to small-scale farmers. Of course, there are other myriad of channels, for example, using farmer Facebook groups. There are large ones like Digital Farmers Kenya, where there's about 540,000 farmers there. And of course, they are very important because traditionally, even if you go to the villages right now, most farmers get information through peer-to-peer learning. So they will go to a neighbor who is better in farming, a neighbor who keeps maybe a better livestock, and they'll be able to learn more from them. So peer-to-peer learning, of course, like using the Facebook groups, of course, helps a lot. So in my conclusion, what I would say is it's important to ensure that even as you choose the different channels of communicating to small-scale farmers and communities, it's important to have a hybrid model because farmers have a tendency to rely on a physical person who is giving them information. So traditionally, we had a lot of course, extension officers from the government. Currently, the ratio is close to about one officer, extension officer, serving about 2,000 farmers, which is illogical. It doesn't make sense. So it's therefore important to have a hybrid kind of method. And one example we have is Kuza. I know most of you know Kuza. With their agripreneurs, as they deliver the trainings with their portable kits, they are able to address the questions that farmers have. And I'm sure most of us have seen farmers will try to keep cropping cycle calendars on their homes. They'll stick it on their homes as opposed to maybe reading it on their phones. So it's important to have a hybrid of the two channels. But also an advice to most of the ag techs who have developed a lot of solutions is, of course, important to conduct human-centered design to understand the needs of the farmers, the schedules of, for example, if you're sending an SMS, when is the right time to send an SMS, for example. And of course, because there's also bombardment of a lot of information to the farmers, the same farmers from different partners. So it's very critical to also consider all this. So I think I'll stop there because I think we have talked a lot about DIS. And back to you, Chloe. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Sam. I feel like you've brought us full circle in giving some examples of what Kuno started off with on his comments about how we can layer digital solutions with other kinds of programming to make them even more impactful. And thank you everyone in the audience as well for the comments and the questions. We've been clustering them in the background, and we'd like to start off with giving Shadrach an opportunity to respond to a few of the questions about the reports, and specifically those around the digital service opportunity. So the question, one of those questions is Vivian Wasanga asked, did you find out about ownership differentiated by age, gender, different kinds of groups? And so I invite Shadrach to speak to that. And in addition, I think a very interesting challenge and conversation that we've had throughout this study is around data. We had a great question from David on how much is data now creating visibility of farmers. And we launched this study, partnership study, initially as a data analytics study, and after much effort in trying to access many data sets, found that there were challenges in doing so, and we were not able to use some of the methods we intended to in the start. And so a bit on those methods, the challenges, what's possible now, from Shadrach as well would be helpful. So Shadrach, if you could take those two.
Great, thank you, Chloe. For the ease of the audience to put a face on the pic, to put sound on the face. This is Shadrach. I just pulled the main report. Of course, there are a few things, and apologies for sharing it as it is. So we are still doing some color grading here and there. So in terms of the profiles, there is quite a lot of information that is in the main report, and as we indicated, Collins will be able to share about when these will be shared. But we have much information on cell ownership, radio ownership, and also that is shared at the level of case studies, and also distribution by smallholder farmers. I think the other slide was slide 16.9. Yes, if you look at this, there is more granular information about how smallholder farmers really do access funds and the type of funds they do have. And we used quite a lot of data from GSMA and also Geopol. That is much of the information that we had access to. But this will be very clear once you go through the main report that shares more insights into this. In terms of see the second question that Chloe asked me to respond to. How much data is? How much data?
So the question from David was about how much is the accessibility of data now creating visibility of farmers and pastoralists? So secondary data sets from national research partners, from international research partners. We have more and more data. How accessible it is it? How much additional visibility is it creating? What did we learn in this study?
Great. Actually, at the time when we started doing the study, we wrote to many partners who we already are wishing to get much information from. We wrote to the government institutions, quite a number of them, and we were able to get to access data, not only the reports, and also in some cases we're not able also to access the data due to cited data privacy issues. For CalRO, we realized that they were using the main data from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, and we had access to the data. We also got access more data from Financial Sector Deepening, which is working closely with ILRI and also Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and KIPRA. So we did blend quite a number of information and data sets, but we only stick to the information that was really making sense upon comparing with the different sources, and also looking at the objectives of the study, of course, which may not clearly align to our objectives, and being able to come up with a final conclusion after we do comparisons and literature reviews. Thank you. Over to you, Chloe.
Thanks so much, Shadrach. I'd love to invite next Collins to reflect on a few of the questions in the chat, and also wrap us up and share with us how we can best access this information. There were lots of questions on when the reports will be available, how to receive them, how to engage more. We'd love to engage, and we'll be sharing those shortly. So all of those details from Collins from AgriFin next.
I was also combing through the questions, and I'm really happy to see that there is a lot of interest and paying attention to what is being presented. I'd just like to start by putting everything into perspective. We're just coming from the COVID pandemic, the locust invasion, now there is a global recession, and we're all looking at developing or designing initiatives. And based on the time that the COVID pandemic prevailed, there was little going on, there was little research being done. We kind of don't know where to start or where to refer to, so we can start crafting these initiatives that would want to help smallholder farmers and agropastoralists and pastoralists. So we felt that for us to be able to produce a particular resource that anybody in the industry is looking to digitize agro producers, where can they go and refer and get information that can help them start or ramping up some of these initiatives that need to happen for us to get back to where we were and build upon to from where we were. We realized during the COVID pandemic from research done by Decibels that the level of digital use markedly increased among agro producers. So based on that, how do we build upon that? What was there before? And all those questions can be answered by this report. Is that repository where we can go and look at and not have to look at different sources. We didn't want to be in a position where if I want to know about the plight or where the agro producers currently are in Kenya, I have to comb through different sources. We wanted it to be one particular resource, and that's what gave birth to this research project. And working with Dalberg, we're able to see what kind of recent research exists. And even through that, we're able to see now that there are even research gaps that need to be filled, because we need to know where to invest our limited resources in terms of research, in terms of project implementation resources, to know where exactly we need to invest in to gain the most value. So when we came up with this research project, we realized that if we have this resource, all of us as players in the industry can easily go, look at it, and then build upon it. But that doesn't mean that we won't look, we're not looking at other aspects. Like I've seen the questions that aspects that focusing on sustainability and what works and what doesn't work. As AgriFin and as SPARC, we look at generating evidence and looking at what particular initiatives exist as well. So there are different publications that we do in addition to what we are doing now that pertain to that. One example that AgriFin, one document that AgriFin does and we're doing with our partners is we do an evidence gap map, where we look at what evidence has been generated across digital farmer services, and we publish that on our social media channels and our available channels, including our website, so we can easily access and know what evidence has come up within the past 1 year. So that is something that also we will be looking towards developing. But the purposes of this particular report was to just show where or to give us a benchmark of where agro producers currently are. And this will help in terms of how we craft our innovations going forward. And we hope that it will do the same for you as well, because I'm excited now that I have one repository where I can easily go and access or know where agro producers currently stand. And the other thing that I wanted to also just build upon is that we have not just had this vision for Kenya. The vision also includes having a similar repository for Ethiopia, a similar repository for Nigeria. We are currently working to finalize a similar report for Ethiopia, and a similar report for how to publish that and conduct a similar exercise like this through webinar to disseminate it. So I'd like to encourage this particular group, and also if you have partners and colleagues in Nigeria and in Ethiopia, to put them on the lookout that these additional reports are coming out, where we can be able to see where agro producers currently stand, and we can help build upon and help ramp up activities as we try to build from how the effects of the COVID pandemic and the current economic situation. And we hope with that we continue to build on this body of evidence. And if there is additional resources or additional aspects that you see can be valuable to this kind of report, we're also looking for that level of feedback. Like I've seen on the comments that there is an initiative going or has been going on, I think for a decade now, called Plantwise, that was meant to increase access to information on pests and diseases. And initiative has been going on, but now we're seeing that probably it has not probably made the level of effect that it needs to be made, or the level of awareness that needs to happen around it. So probably that can show us that we need to adjust the way the awareness of it has been done, because if it is being shared through extension agents, probably they are not expressly telling them that this is a Plantwise service available, or we can dig deeper and try to find out why it's not having the effect that we want it to have. But as I initially started by saying, is that we realize that most of the studies have not been done for the past 2 to 3 years, mainly because of the COVID pandemic. What you're presenting here is what was there before and what has been done until the beginning of this year. We just did a cross-sectional study for us to understand where we are in terms of research, in terms of evidence, or just to understand where we stand as the industry that is serving agro producers. So if you are an implementer, if you are an innovator, if you are an investor, you can now know based on what you like to do or what you like to implement in the industry, how to go about, or what document to reference to when you're trying to see what else you need to be invested in. Definitely, we need to have more investments in additional research. We need to know how best to place our resources, and that's what I'm banking on, that based on this research, you can be able to see what gaps exist. We can collaborate, as I'm seeing some of those conversations going on as well in the chat, that we can easily reach out to each and every organization that is represented here. We know we know what can be done and what additional research needs to be done for us to continue building on this community of practice and encourage collaboration. A lot of research work is being done and not aggregated in one particular place. And what we'd like to do is ensure that we build upon this document so that as we continue doing additional research, we know what particular gaps we are filling at the moment, because we have identified different gaps. When you look at the wider report, you will see that there are definite research gaps that need to be addressed. We as a consortium, we will look at how best to address those particular gaps. But what I'd want to encourage the participants is that based on the gaps you're seeing, based on the information you're seeing, now we can go and craft those relevant initiatives that can actually help smallholder farmers, agro producers, agropastoralists, and pastoralists for them to move from one stage to the next. As you have seen, you've heard from Dr. Kuno and Abdi Fatah and Grace and Sam. We're all looking at crafting initiatives that can help this group of people. And we don't normally, or what we normally do is we base it on information and base it on facts. And this is what we want this particular report to be, that factual place where you can go and look at what is the current situation and see how best to build upon it. And if anything is missing, now you can have conversations on how do we fill those particular gaps of information, because we want it to be more complete. And now you can continue having this universal tool or universal resource that can help us achieve our goals as a team. So with that, I'll just end with one of the key questions that are being asked. One of the key reasons we're having this webinar is to gather additional feedback as we finalize the report. So the report is close to final. And based on the questions that have come in and the additional insights that have come in, we're going to now probably add those components to it and then now publish it. Based on the timeline, we should be able to share this report with you as soon as possible, and we will share it on our website. The people who have participated in this particular website, they will receive information through our communication channel on how and when to access the report. However, the summary findings will be available immediately as on our social media channels. And once we share the final report, we will also be engaging you as the audience in further conversations based on the insights that are being seen on the report. So once the report has been launched, would like to have more other conversations with you on our different platforms where you can react based on the insights that you're seeing and reach out to us in terms of any collaboration or any partnerships that you would want to have with us. With that, I would like to thank you for taking your time to be part of this webinar. And as I said, we hope you will join us for the additional webinars for Ethiopia and Nigeria. I would like to thank the panelists. I'd like to thank our moderator, Chloe, for doing a marvelous job in taking us through this particular session. The wonderful team behind creation of this webinar that has come to you, the communications team that has been able to set everything up, and the Dalberg team for doing such a great work in terms of bringing all this research and research together. We're looking forward to having more conversations with you. This is just a start, and I hope it was as useful to you as it was as useful to us. Thank you for your time today, and I wish you a good day and a good evening, wherever part of the world you are today.